Right, so in the previous video we have discussed how to integrate the security concerns in our application. So we have completed all the necessary implementations of that features as well. And now let's see how to version control our code and how to work with GitHub as well. So GitHub is a central repository management environment, which means you can push your codes, or maybe you can even store your code in a central place. Then in the practical scenarios, any front end or back end application or service is created and managed by a team, right? So it is not usually done by a single person. So these code bases should be publicly or maybe even privately available for everyone within the team. Then it will be more organized and it will be more easy for deal with several circumstances as well. For example, development of your application, or maybe managing the code base, or maybe how to deal with the changes or new implementations, something like that. So that is why we use this GitHub as a version controlling tool. So first let me create an organization. So organization is something dedicated to store your repositories, right? So you can create any number of organizations within GitHub under free plan. And if you are willing to get more features for your organization, maybe you can buy these premium packages as well. But for now, I think the free organizations will be enough. So I will name the account name as maybe Simple Epic Express, and you have to provide. I think this is not available. Let me create a new organization called Express.js. And contact email is also required. Let's say, so for now I will add my email, and I will point it to my personal account, and you have to pass this security test as well, and simply click agree, and then it will construct the organization for you. Then you can add team members for this organization, but I can simply skip this step right now, because later on if you want to add people, you can simply go to the team and you can construct a new team as well. And if you want to add individual members, simply go to the people, and under members you can simply invite the members by searching their username. Right, now let's go to the overview. So overview basically shows the existing status of your organization. But what we require is go into these repositories and construct a new repository to store our Express.js REST API. So you can simply create a new repository and maybe give a name. Let's say Express REST API. And you can choose the visibility level as well, whether it is private or public, something like that. Then simply click create repository. Right, now our repository has been created. Then what we have to do is we need to point out this repository in our local code base as well. So in order to do that, first your device should have installed this git SCM. So it is the underlying framework that is operating these GitHub related services for you. So you have to download and install it, and once it was done, they will provide GUI or bash, something like this. So this will be having all the necessary git commands for you. For example, let's say type git, and it will show all the necessary commands that is available under git SCM. But as a beginner level, these command line interfaces may be kind of new to you. So in order to have a more easier version controlling schema, you can use this GitHub desktop application. So GitHub desktop is basically a GUI to this Git SCM, right? So underlying Git SCM will be operated, but in order to invoke those commands, they will provide user interface for you, right? So simply install this GitHub desktop as well. And once it was installed, GitHub desktop will be look like this, right? So you can see that it is providing user friendly interface for you. And make sure you are logged under your GitHub account. So currently my GitHub account is this. So my organization is under this account. So you also can log from your account over here. Otherwise the pushing and pulling of your repositories may not work correctly, right, because of the security concerns. Right, so once everything was installed and set up, just simply go back to your repository, and here you can see that setup in desktop is now available. So if you click that out and open in GitHub desktop, it will simply open the GitHub repository for you. But as it says, currently we contain the files inside our repository. So basically GitHub won't allow us to construct a repository in this manner. But if you are in the very beginning started to create in this repository, then you can set up that repository on your local device by using this option. But currently we have entire setup has been already created in our local system. So what we have to do is, first we have to start from our local device and go to the GitHub cloud environment. So simply go to this add local repository path. So here you have to select your repository or your local repository, right? So currently it is Express.js API, so I will choose that, and yeah, you can simply select the entire folder. So this says this directory does not appear to be a Git repository. Would you like to create a repository instead here instead? And yeah, maybe check select that option, and you can give a name, give a description, and maybe give a initialized readme, stuff like that. And you can if you want to specify a explicit git ignore, you can do that here as well. And the license terms you can add here as well. Maybe I will add the MIT license. And for the git ignore, let me check whether they have the Express.js, something like that, or Node.js maybe. Yeah, I think they have Node, so I will simply select that and create a repository. Yeah, now the repository has been created. Okay, and I can simply publish this to my github.com, right? So here you have to select the organization. So for me it is this simple epic Express.js, so I will select that and simply publish the repository. But I have to forget to mention that first you have to commit the changes as well, right? So this initial commit is a commit that I've been tested before, so that's why it was there by default, but for you it won't be there. So I will simply remove and explain the current overview you may have, right? So probably your code base may look like this, and if your code base is look like this, then I think everything is correctly there. But maybe in several cases your changed file may contain these node modules as well. So that happens because you have to first specify this git ignore file as well. And as I remembered in the very beginning, we have constructed our own git ignore file as well, but in any way, since we have specified that git ignore as node, by default they have constructed this file for us, right? So it is the developers make much more convenient to use this GitHub desktop in order to specify those ignoring files as well, right? So that's what I wanted to point it out. So make sure the node modules are not specified over here. Otherwise, these node modules are kind of unnecessary source modules that you shouldn't push to this GitHub repository, right? So currently we don't have that. And then we have to make a commit as well. So commit is something like some sentence that you are saying to GitHub, okay, so this is the changes that have been made, right? So it explains the changes that you have been done briefly. So for me, this is the initial commit, so I will simply say initial commit to GitHub or something like that. So commit to main, and then it show this icon, publish the repository. So I will select that. Again, I have to choose the organization and simply click the publish repository. But it says that unable to create repository for organization, verify the repository does not already exist and that you have the permission to create the repository there. I think it happens because we have first created this repository in our organization, right? Here you can see that our repository is there. So I will simply delete it by specifying like this, and you have to give the credentials as well. Okay, now we don't have any repositories. Then let's try to publish the repository. You can see that now it is publishing to the GitHub. Now our repository should be available on the GitHub, so I will simply refresh it. You can see that our repository is now there. So here I showed a one way, right? So what I have done was first I construct a local code base and then pushed it to the GitHub, right? So it is something like local to cloud way, right? But in some scenarios, and the most common scenarios, what happen is that cloud to local repository initialization, which means first you construct a repository over github.com, then you will point it out that repository to your local device, right? That is the second way. But in either ways, the outcome will be somewhat similar, right? So here you can now go to this repository and you can see that all the necessary files are there. So here the message saying that add a readme with an overview of your project. So readme is something like a markdown documentation that explains about your repository and its sources and what it's doing and what is it licensed, something like things like that. So maybe let's create a git readme md file as well. So here now this is my code base. So I will go to the root system and create a file called readme.md. So md file is something you can maybe go to the Google and simply maybe search markdown cheat sheet. So in the markdown cheat sheet there has been mentioned all the necessary syntaxes you can use in the md files, right? So yeah, and maybe you can install this what is this extension, I think it's let me check, markdown or something like that. Yeah, so there are several extensions as well that is helping for your MD file creations, but I think by default VS Code offering that feature for you as well. So if you click that preview button, so in the real time it will show the readme MD file content here as well. So for example, if I wanted to add the title like, let's say, Expressed REST API, you can see that now automatically the styles has been added like this. And if you wanted to add subtitle, let's say maybe content, you can see that that title is there, right? And likewise there are a lot of options available in the markdown, so you can check those stuffs as well, but for now I will simply add this title, right? So now you can see a new change, which means which is this file name now has been green, has become green, and it is simply because of this GitHub, right? So if you remember, once in the initial stages we haven't had installed this GitHub, and we haven't initialized the repository for our code base, so that's why we didn't had this feature, and later on, as I remember, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, but since we have now initialized the repository, we have these sort of features as well. So in the GitHub desktop you can see that okay, you have created a new file and it is need to be pushed to the repository as well, because you have simply created this file on your local device. But if you go to the github.com, in your repository there is no file like that. So it is a change on your local device. So GitHub simply identified that change and tell to you, okay, you need to push this change to the repository, then other people will be able to get that change on their local device as well, right? So that is how this version controlling and GitHub operates. So once you have created these sort of files, you have to make a commit, right? So I will name this as maybe created readme.md and simply commit to the main. And once it was committed, now there is no publishing branches or things like that. Now it simply says push to the origin, which means now your branch is available on your GitHub, and all you have to do is syncing the changes with that specific branch each time whenever you are doing a specific change to your local repository. So yeah, you can either choose this option or maybe this option, whatever you want. So I will simply use this button, then it will be pushed to the GitHub, right? So everything was done, and let's go back to the GitHub and refresh it. Now you can see that readme.md file is there, and the readme.md file content is also visible over here. Alright, so I think that's all I wanted to showcase in the version controlling chapter. And yeah, there are a lot of options in GitHub when it comes to this version controlling and code base management and stuff like that. So you can discover those stuff, and maybe in future I will create another tutorial series for this GitHub stuff as well. So if you want such a tutorial, let me know that as well. And yeah, I think I have showcased you everything I wanted to be shown, and yeah, that's it. And I will see you in the next video.